Namaskar friends. In the last video, we discussed that a field called Higgs field was discovered in the CERN laboratories of Switzerland. We also discussed its definition, and we also discussed that the definition of Higgs field is same as that the definition of Brahm. Now in this video, we are further going to discuss the definition of Brahm. Now, friends, note that the definition of Brahm has not been defined in just one sentence. It has been explained in many verses, in many scriptures, many ancient Indian texts. There must be hundreds of descriptions of the same definition of Brahm in ancient Indian texts. For clarity of the purpose, over here I am going to discuss some verses which have been described in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Now, in Srimad Bhagavad Gita also, there are more than, I think, 50 verses which discuss the definition or description of Brahm. Now, over here in this video, I'll discuss a few. The students who want to know more about Brahm, I will give the references below this video. Now, right now, we'll discuss the definition of Brahm. Brahmarpanam Brahm Havir Brahmagno Brahmanahutam Brahmavtain Gantavyam Brahmakam Samadhina. Friends, this verse says that the object with which the offerings are made, the pots in which the material of offerings are stored, the materials which are offered in those pots, they are all Brahm. Even the act of making the offering is Brahm. And the person who has achieved supreme samadhi by way of these offerings is also in Brahm. So the result of all that activity is also Brahm. Now in this verse, Bhagavan Krishna says, in short, he tries to explain that everything, right from the person who is making the offerings, right to the act of offering, right to the offerings itself, the pot in which the offering is made, everything is Brahm. So Bhagavan Krishna is trying to say that the entire physical existence, including every act, every thought, every material, is Brahm. Avyaktaad vaktaya sarva prabhavante haragme ratyagme praliyante tatrayvaya vyakt sanjike. In this verse, Bhagavan Krishna says that at the beginning of the day of Brahma, we will come to the details of the day of Brahma and all later in this course. Now, Bhagavan Krishna is saying that at the beginning of the day of Brahma, all physical bodies are born from Avyakt. Avyakt means that invisible. What is that invisible? That is invisible Brahm. And when the night of Brahma comes, in the same Avyakta, in the same Brahm, all the physical bodies are dissolved. Now again in this verse, Bhagavan Krishna is saying that everything, all the physical bodies in this universe, are born from Brahma. And, and that is when the day of Brahma starts. And when the day of Brahma ends, the same physical bodies that have emerged from Brahma are dissolved in the same Brahma. Now we go on to the next verse. The next verse says, Bhutgrama sa evayam bhutva bhutva praliyate ratyag me avasha partha prabhavatte harag me. That, O Parth, O Arjun, the same beings or the souls, again and again, being in the control of nature, are born as physical bodies and dissolve when the night of Brahma comes. Now, in this verse again, Bhagavan Krishna is saying that all the physical bodies, the bodies of the living beings, are born from this Brahma and they dissolve in the same Brahma when the night of Brahma comes. Now, in the next verse, Bhagavan Krishna says, Bahirantash bhutanam charam charamev cha sukshmatvat tavidyayam durastham chantike cha tat. Now, in this verse, Bhagavan Krishna is addressing the same Brahm as Paramatman. Friends, note this word, Paramatman. And he's saying that that Paramatma is inside and outside of all the physical bodies, as well as all the moving or immovable living beings. And he's saying that he pervades the farthest and the nearest spaces, and being highly incomprehensible in any way can also not be known by way of feeling of senses. Now, in this verse, Bhagavan Krishna is saying that Paramatman, first of all, he is calling the same Brahm as Paramatma. He is saying that that Brahm, that Paramatma, is inside and outside of all the physical bodies, living or non living, moving or immovable living beings. And that Paramatma pervades the farthest corners or the nearest of spaces. And that Paramatma is also incomprehensible, that we cannot feel it by our senses. Now, when we analyze these last four verses from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, you will know that first of all, Bhagavan Krishna has described that all living or non living physical matter, including living beings, have emerged from this Brahm. Okay. And then he also says that there is a cycle that we'll be discussing in the coming lectures. At the beginning of the day of Brahma, which is also called Kalp, all these living beings, living matter emerges from the Brahm and dissolves in the same Brahm when the night comes. And the same Brahm is pervading the entire universe, the farthest of places and the nearest of places, and is inside you as well as outside you. Now, in these four verses, when we analyze, we see that it is identical to the definition of Higgs field. And he also says that Brahm is Paramatman. This is very important. You must understand. This is very important. He addresses the Brahm as Paramatman. And he also says that this field of Brahm cannot be felt. A friend, just you just think, can you feel the electromagnetic field that connects your mobile to the tower? Can you feel it? You cannot feel it. But this electromagnetic field can be detected by certain instruments. The engineers who are listening to this will know. But this field of Brahm can either not be detected or comprehended by our senses, as also it cannot also be detected by any instrument. Now, in this lecture, you think about all this, and then we will discuss something more about Brahm in the next lecture. Friends, I'd like to add a note to this video. Many of you might be thinking that I have arrived upon these translations of the verses on my own. So let me tell you, these are not my own translations. I have arrived upon these translations or interpretations after reading about 6 to 7 versions of Srimad Bhagavad Gita by different authors. And these include, first of all, one very old version of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, which was available in our house. Then two versions of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, including Sadhat Sanjeevani by the Gita Press. Then about three versions of Srimad Bhagavad Gita by the translations published by ISKCON, which have been done by Srila Prabhupada ji. As also, there is one more, which is called Sri Ganeshwari. Now, it is after reading all these versions or translations or interpretations of Srimad Bhagavad Gita that I have arrived upon these particular interpretations of the verses. One more thing, Bhagwan Krishna clearly says in Srimad Bhagavad Gita itself that you should not take out meanings from what he is saying. You should take the translation of the words as they are. The best ones which I found are Sri Ganeshwari and Sadhak Sanjeevani, both by Gita Press. So, friends, please keep this in mind that these are not my personal translations or interpretations of the verses. These are an assessment after reading about 6 or 7 or 8 versions of Srimad Bhagavad Gita.